All right, guys, we're back. Is everybody there? Let me address real quick. I have a message from Mauricio. Oh, actually, you're replying to Yariel. We're not required in the state of New Jersey, so for all of you, we're not required in the state of New Jersey to provide you anything. You have 4 walls, be happy for that, right? If there's a stove and if there's a dishwasher, if there's a fridge, those are extras. It's not required, all right? So if it comes without a fridge and you put one in, that's yours. The question was, are you replacing something that's mine or making additions to like a fixture if you're attaching stuff? Because think about it, the fridge will be like your bed and like your dresser and the couch and all that stuff. It doesn't belong to me just because you added to the property. Does that make sense? Those personal properties. But if you have something that's attached to the property, then it becomes the landlord's if you did it without permission. The key word what you need to look out in the state exam and in school exam, the key word is permission. If the question does not state specific permission, then you know the answer already. It belongs to the landlord. If there's permission, then most likely at this point we agreed and it becomes it is the tenant's or is removable, right? But the key word is permission. Jeff just wrote, I think Section 8 has some requirements. Yeah. So I'll put it this way regarding Section 8, real quick. And we need to speed up a little bit. But in terms of Section 8, it's a different animal. Even if a town, we're going to talk about it, if a town does not have rent control, Section 8 does. Because they have a maximum that they authorize and you cannot charge more above that unless it's by agreement, right? So Section 8 might have additional requirements that the state of New Jersey does not have or that your municipality does not have. Does that make sense? So these are obviously things you're going to learn along the way, but it does have some differences. So remember, every time government is involved, so we're going to talk about FHA and VA loans as well. Every time government is involved, the guidelines are a little different. Now, maintenance of premises. That's what we have next. Maintenance of premises. So you guys need to pay attention to this because every lease comes with the implied warranty of habitability, okay? You people still have cameras off. Bring your cameras back. Right. So, maintenance implied warranty of habitability. What does that mean? It means that the landlord guarantees that the leased property is fit for human habitation and that the tenant is not subjected to any conditions that could endanger life, health, or safety. So that means that the landlord is required to maintain and keep the units in a habitable condition, as well as making all necessary repairs to common areas as well. You guys got it? Very important. Next. The next page says that a landlord must make necessary repairs within reasonable time after notification. Now, what is a reasonable time after notification? It depends on the circumstances, depending on what the issue is. For instance, I always compare this to being give the example of being in the middle of winter and having no heat. Do you think we should wait a week before we get service done? No. In the winter, no heat is an emergency, so it's ASAP. You got it? As soon as possible and no more than 24 hours when it comes to that type of circumstance. If it's a plumbing issue, if it's a minor plumbing issue, it could take a couple more days, right? If it's a hole on the wall, it's not essential. You're not going to die from a hole on the wall. It's not going to endanger your life, health, and safety. So it could take a little bit more. Does that make sense, guys? It depends on the circumstances. Now, New Jersey, right here, if a landlord fails to make repairs, New Jersey does recognize the tenant's right to repair and deduct. Okay? You got it? New Jersey does allow the tenant to repair and deduct. So if the landlord's not fixing it, you can take over and start fixing it. Or you could just withhold the rent, not pay until the repairs are done. Obviously, any of these actions should be consulted with a lawyer before you do it, because if you don't do it right, he can say to the judge that you were just taking advantage of a particular situation. So, right here, consult an attorney first. Okay? Now, where the landlord furnishes heat, so if the heat to the house is provided by your landlord or controlled by the landlord, then between October 1st and May 1st, all rooms must be heated to at least 68 degrees from 6 a.m. to 11 p.m. and to at least 65 degrees at night. Okay, these are the requirements in New Jersey. Okay, I have a message from Jasiel. Does the permission have to be in writing? You were talking about permission to add or remove something. The answer is yes. Should always have some. Guys, the answer to everything is put it in writing. Let's put it like that. The answer to everything is put in writing. Somebody promised you something, put it in writing. Somebody said, this is how we agree to things. This is what I'm going to do. This is what you're going to do. Put it in writing. This is what I intend to do. Put it in writing. You got it? Always put it in writing. That's how we're able to go back and look at tweets from certain people and see that they said the exact opposite a couple of months ago. Right? Just saying. All right, assignment and subleasing. I already addressed this before. You could sublease or not. You can assign or not, subject to the conditions of the contract. If the contract says no subleasing and no assignment without written permission of the landlord, then can you do it? Obviously not. So this is where we talked about Airbnb right in the beginning. This is what we were talking about, assignment and subleasing. We need to remember about the difference between these two. If you guys remember from yesterday, in an assignment, we're transferring the rights and duties to a new person, but we retain secondary liability. Remember that? Yes, when we talk about wholesaling, it's the same thing for rent. I rented this space. Now I want to get out and I transfer it to somebody else, right? That somebody else is primary liable and I'm secondary liable. Meaning if they don't pay, I'm still responsible for paying even though I don't occupy the premises anymore, okay? Because I was the original person with the obligation and I just transferred to somebody else. Yes, Nanette, we did. It was the assignment and novation. That's what we talked about yesterday. The difference between assignment here and subleasing is that in subleasing, the one that assigns the subleasing is fully liable for the rent. See, an assignment is a transfer to somebody else. A sublease is a portion of my lease is transferred to somebody else. So in one is the whole thing, the other one is a portion. So a lot of people, and I had a tenant that rented I always talk about this. He rented a 3-bedroom from me, and it was just him. And that 3-bedroom, I asked him, like, you sure it's just you? Because it's just going to be you on the lease. You're fully liable for it. Just saying. And he goes like, yeah. This room I'm going to do like put some machines for the gym for me, so it's how I work out at home. This other room I'm going to make my office, and then the master bedroom obviously is where I'm going to sleep. I'm like, okay, if that's what you want, that's what you want, right? Who am I to judge? It didn't take 2 days. There was like 6 or 7 people walking in and out. All right. So I'm not going to tell you the whole story, but it did happen. So long story short, it did happen that he got to a point where the tenants that he got there without my permission, let's start with that. The tenants that he got there did not pay him. So he comes to me and says, Bruno, I cannot pay you this month yet because my roommates did not pay me. I'm like, room who? I already knew, but I was just ignoring. The room who? And he goes like, my roommates. I'm like, no, I leased it to you. Guys, I lease it to you. If you sublease to somebody else, that's not my problem. That's your problem. Because if you want them to be liable, then they have to be on my lease, not yours. You guys understand? That's the difference between assignment and subleasing. In a subleasing, the sublessor, which is my tenant, becomes solely responsible for the rent and any destruction. So if you sublease to other people, that's where Airbnb becomes a difficult thing as well. If you sublease to other people and they destroy, guess what? You're still the one, the original one is still the one responsible for all those actions. You got it? Thumbs up if you got it. Great. All right, destruction of the premises. That one's common sense. If you destroy, you got to fix it. And we're going to go to termination of lease. We already talked about all this. How do you terminate a lease? Well, if it's a definite period of time, so this is what we called a state 4 years, right? If it's a definite period of time, then do I have to give you notice that I'm going to leave? No. Do you have to call me and tell me to leave? No. We already agreed that I was going to leave or you were going to leave. I don't have to give any notice because it terminates when it expires. If it's a month to month, we got to give proper notice. We got that. What about this one? Let's say the conditions of a lease are breached or broken. The landlord may terminate the lease and evict the tenant. But this action must be handled through a court. This action must be handled through court. You cannot kick somebody out. You cannot get rid of a tenant, right? Using threats of violence, changing locks, discontinuing essential services like water or heat, or seizing the tenant's possessions. Unless the landlord's Portuguese, then we can do whatever we want because we're powerful like that. All right? The point is, a lot of people, like I said right in the beginning of this chapter, leases are easy, right? A lot of people, landlords, oh, it's my house, I can do whatever I want. If you're not paying, I'm kicking you out. It's not like that, right? It's not like that. You have to go through court. Got it? A lot of people do the things that are mentioned here, the threats of violence, the changing locks. Just wait until they come back from work. They're going to see everything out in the street. Or let me turn off the heat or the water. Can't do that, right? I'll tell you, I have a story for everything. If I were to tell you all my stories here, we'll never end. I purchased a foreclosure property, and the people that were living there after the owner abandoned, they were renting the first floor, and they subleased the basement. The person in the basement was not paying the first floor, so they turned off the heat and the water. Like, who are you to do this? Are you kidding me? You turn off the heat and the water to a sublessee when you're not even the one entitled to do this, right? Crazy stories. But nobody can do that. Change locks, discontinue essential services, or seize the tenant's possessions. Now, it's also possible for the parties to a lease to agree to cancel the lease, meaning, hey, I need to go my way. Are you okay with that? Landlord says, sure, you can go. We made an agreement. We made a civil agreement to cancel the lease. Totally fine, right? But a tenant who abandons the lease, meaning you're there for 1 year, your lease is for 1 year, but 6 months later you get out, you are still liable for the other 6 months. What you guys need to know is that in New Jersey, and some states, most states have a law similar to this, in New Jersey, the landlord is required to try to mitigate the damages first. How? By renting the property as soon as possible to another tenant. So I could easily just sit back and relax because you owe me money, right? No, I have to find another tenant, and the difference between this tenant's paying me and what you owe me is what I go after. I cannot charge you for the 6 months. I'll charge you for the difference. Crazy, right? You breached the contract and I cannot do anything unless I prove that I was unable to rent. In fact, if I can only find a tenant who will pay a lower rent, then the original tenant is liable for the difference as well. Crazy, right? Now, the advance notice to be given to the landlord or tenant who wants to end the relationship varies according to the type of leasehold. If it's an estate for years, we already know, no advance notice, right? But if it's a month to month or week to week or year to year, it has its rules. Year to year, I have to give you 3 months notice for you to leave or that I'm leaving. Month to month, 1 month's notice. And again, before the rent is due, remember that. Week to week, 1 week notice, again, before the rent is due. The next thing, we already addressed this as well. Unless a lease states otherwise, it survives a sale. That means there's a new owner, but there's the same lease. So this might be a question in the state exam. The new owner has to honor the lease that exists. And this is true even if it's a foreclosure, okay? A lot of people that buy foreclosed properties and go knock on the door and say, hey, your rent is now $2,000 when they were paying $1,000. Can't do that. If they're paying tenants, if they've been loyal with their payments, right, then you cannot change it. Next thing we have, we're on page 172. We have truth in renting. Now, let me see here real quick. Landlords, raise your hand. If you're a landlord, raise your hand real quick. Okay, there's a few hands up. I don't know what Yariel was doing. I saw something like this. I don't know if he was putting his hand up or just his beard, whatever. Okay, there's a few hands up. Okay, so landlords, pay attention because this is your obligation. And tenants, pay attention because you should have this. It says right here, New Jersey Department of Community Affairs. And again, every state has something towards this. New Jersey Department of Community Affairs publishes an annual updated statement on the rights and duties of residential landlords and tenants. Included is information on eviction procedures, building maintenance requirements, and rent and lease provisions. So this statement or this pamphlet that is distributed annually pretty much states everything we have in this chapter. And it says right here that landlords must give a copy to every tenant and post a copy on the property. Crazy, right? Tenants, how many of you received this? In the chat, tell me if you received it. If you didn't, you didn't, but tell me if you received it. Okay. So we got 2 people that say, I received it. We had only 3 people that raised their hands when it comes to being landlords. So I assume that the rest of you either didn't get it or you're a homeowner of a single family, right? So Victoria says, never did when I rented and never saw it posted on the property. All right, Samori, single homeowner, there you go. But if you buy a multifamily, now you know. Required that a copy is given to every tenant and posted on the property. Mauricio wrote, I was a landlord and gave it with the lease. Okay, great, but you never posted it. It happens. There you go. If you guys want a copy of it, you can Google it, but it's right here. These links, just copy them if you have the PDF. So just copy it, paste it, and download it. Okay? Again, you don't need to do it now, so don't stress over it. But make sure you get it. So post it on the property, so anywhere that's visible. Just like those notices of equal employment opportunity and equal housing opportunity and all that. Those notices must be visible to everybody. That's what it is. All right. Next thing we got is ADA. And where it says ADA, we're talking about the Americans with Disability Act. There's only 3 things you need to know here. Number 1, ADA is for people with disabilities. That's number one. Number two, it only applies to commercial properties. It only applies to commercial properties. And number three, you're not obligated to make changes to the property unless it's something that it's reasonably achievable. And that means low cost. Easy and low cost. Okay? So I don't have to restructure my whole building to put an elevator. That's costly, right? But if I do have an elevator, guys, if I do have it, then something cheap to do is installing auditory signals. Something cheap to do is adding raised letters and braille markings on the elevator buttons. Easy. Something easy to do and cheap to do is putting a ramp or removing obstacles. Something easy to do is making sure if I have a parking spaces that are reserved for the business, make sure I have handicap parking spaces as well. These are easy, these are cheap. You guys understand? Let's go back to this real quick. ADA, people with disabilities, applies only to commercial properties. ADA, this is federal, applies only to commercial properties. And to protect owners of existing structures from the massive expense of extensive remodeling, ADA recommends reasonably achievable accommodation. And that means low cost and easy. You guys good? So again, little difficulty and low cost. Questions? Sorry, Maria, you have to walk up the stairs. That's the bottom line. Elevator is not a requirement. It's very expensive. I don't have to restructure my whole building. But if I do have an elevator, then there's a few things that should be done. Okay? All right, so okay, the next thing we got, page 173. Rental referral services. This was from chapter 1, so I'm just going to skip it, guys. We addressed this in chapter 1. All it says is that you have to have a license and a contract for every single rental referral you do. That's all. Okay? Then we have, on the right-hand side, we have rent control. What is rent control? Well, keeping the rents at a certain value or with limited increase, right? So reasonable increases. And the thing about New Jersey, is that we don't have an actual law regarding rent control, not a specific law, let's put it like that. In New Jersey, the law says reasonable increases are allowed. And if you guys see right here, individual communities set their own rent control. So the government says, the state government says, reasonable increases. And then each municipality goes like, okay, I think reasonable is 3%. I think reasonable is 5%. Or I'm with the state. Reasonable, and we figure out later. And that's how it is. So we have here that only one quarter of the state municipality actually have some form of rent control. The majority of it doesn't care. They go with reasonable increases. We'll fight it in courts and later, and it depends on what the judge feels like. Remember that? Okay. I have a friend of mine, the landlord increased $500 on the rent. $500. He was paying $1,500, now $2,000 a month. Right? So $500, that's a huge increase, isn't it? Right? Went to court to fight it, and because he said he was not going to pay that much, he will pay only the 1,500, or if he wanted to increase, he would give him a little bit more, no problem. So went to court, and the judge said $500 seems reasonable considering the location of the property and the tax increase that occurred. And you've been there on the month to month. You don't have a long-term lease and blah, 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 a bunch of stuff later. My friend had to leave the property, right? So remember, it's whatever the judge feels like becomes law. That's how it is. So most limit the allowable yearly increases. That's what we're talking about. And to encourage construction of more housing units, new construction is exempt from rent control while the initial mortgage is in effect. All right? Page 174. Let me see here real quick. Oh, what do we have? When you say commercial is more than 4-family building. So it starts becoming that, yes. So 5 units or more start falling into the commercial. Yep. Jocelyn, you have the hand up here. Do you have a question? See that the hand is up. Let me know if you have a question or if you want me to lower the hand. No? Okay. And what else we have? Yariel, what's the difference with commercial rent control? The difference is there's none. Commercial properties is different animal. It's more like business to business. So the residential rent control is more to protect the consumer directly. Remember, there's something called Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, is to protect the individual. Business to business, traditionally they don't have the same protections as the individual does. So when it comes to commercial properties, they can raise whatever they want. Now, addressing 5 units or more as commercial, it's different. If 5 units or more are residential, the property manager addresses them as individuals. So they still have rent control. But again, each municipality has their own rent control. And guys, you need to know, that's why I only focus in Newark. I don't need to know every town and what their rent control is, and every town and what their construction codes are, and building codes or whatever, because every town is different, right? I focus in Newark because I want to know everything about Newark, and you should know everything about your market. So, for instance, rent control in Newark is separate for single families, because I can rent a single family. Is different between 2 to 4 units, and it has a whole separate law for 5 or more units. Go ahead, try to figure that out for all the 3,000 or 4,000 municipalities we have. You guys understand? Focus on a particular market, get to know what they're doing, right, and what the rules, regulations are, and be the best at it. That's all. Josiel just wrote, that's at the renewal of the lease. Yes. At the renewal of the lease, they can increase the rent. They can. Everybody can. Right? It's just that depending on if it's your own property, if it's owner-occupied. By the way, owner-occupied, there's another rule for that as well. If it's not owner-occupied, then it's separate. So you got to know each municipality. But yes, it's at renew and increase of rent. Yes. They can only increase on the anniversary of the lease. So what is the anniversary of the lease? Whatever terms you stipulated. So if it's a 6-month lease, I can increase at the 6-month mark. But the municipality does have a particular rule regarding the total increase. Or it might not, depending on the municipality that you're in. Remember, I just read to you guys that only a quarter of the state has some type of stipulated rent control. The majority of the state, so 75% of the state, reasonable increases. Okay? Know the rules, know the law. Eviction. where it says eviction, you guys already know that you cannot do anything without court. Okay? Y'all just ask, how do we find out? The answer is go to the Division of Community Affairs in your town. Or online, just search it. But Division of Community Affairs, because that's where you're going to dispute if the rents are too high or something like that. Oh, just a heads up, if you are in Newark, and some other towns are doing this too, by law, we have to register as a homeowner that is renting. By law, we have to register as a homeowner that is renting, so acting as landlords. If you are in the middle of an eviction, you get to court, right, and you're not registered with your town, the judge in Newark is asking whoever, stating, not even asking, he's stating, whoever's not registered with the city of Newark as a landlord, case dismissed. Just like that. So don't even attempt to step up, because I will shut you down right there and then. Because one of your obligations is to register yourself as a landlord. Got it? So just giving you a heads up of how things are supposed to play. So back to eviction. If there's a case of hardship, the court may allow tenants as long as 6 months to find other accommodations. 6 months. If you can pay, pay. If you cannot pay, don't worry. It's a hardship. We know. Sucks for the landlord. Next. We talked about this in chapter 7 when we talked about condo conversion, right? Condominium and co-ops are forms of ownership. As a landlord, and I have a 100-unit apartment building, and I'm done, if you guys remember I mentioned this, and I'm done being a landlord, for me to maximize the amount of money I get from the building, it's wiser to convert everything to a condo. The thing is, I gotta wait 3 years and 2 months, and certain people are protected, so they cannot be evicted or kicked out because of this conversion. Who are these people? Those with disabilities, and those are age 62 or older. If they've lived in the property for more than 2 years and have an income no higher than 3 times the county's per capita income, no more than $50,000, then they can stay for up to 40 years as tenants. Okay, so this again is just a recap from chapter 7, condo conversion. Constructive eviction. On this one, I want you to write, you evict yourself. Constructive eviction, I want you to write, you evict yourself. You evict yourself. All right, so what does that mean? Why would you evict yourself? What is eviction? Eviction is being able to get out of the property without having any other responsibility or liability in the lease. Or if it's a true eviction, where the landlord is kicking you out, is getting you out of the property and making sure you're liable for the remaining of the lease. Now, how would you evict yourself and not be liable for anything else anymore? Well, the landlord's required to keep the property habitable, right? If they don't, if they're a slumlord, you guys probably heard that term, they're a slumlord, they're not maintaining the property, they're just collecting the rent, and they don't care about you, right? And there's issues with the property and becomes uninhabitable, then the tenant can claim constructive eviction, move out, and cease paying the rent without any further obligations to the lease. So let's say you're there for 6 months and the landlord does not fix it, then that's it. Courtney, unfortunately, this applies to residential. We're talking about residential. There might be other recourses though, but this applies to residential. So the tenant must vacate the property, so you have to leave before claiming constructive eviction. And obviously you should consult with who? an attorney before you do any of these. So can you do it in commercial as well, Courtney? You can, but make sure you consult an attorney for it, and an attorney that deals with leases only. Okay, or its primary focus is real estate and leases. Okay. This one's easy. Suit for suit for possession, actual eviction. This is the normal one. The tenant screwed up and the landlord's kicking him out. This is also called a dispossessed proceeding, because again, I told you, is to get you out of the property. You are in possession of the property. I'm trying to get you out of the property. Dispossessed proceeding. Why would you evict somebody? These are different causes right here. We have several bullet points. I'm not going to go over all of them, but non-payment of rent is an obvious reason to evict somebody, right? You're not paying, I'm going to evict you. What you need to know that I did not know 15 years ago, what you need to know is that if it's for non-payment, I don't need to give you any notice. I can take you straight to court. For non-payment, it's the 5th. You didn't pay me at the end of the business day on the 5th. 6th, at 9 o'clock in the morning if I want, or 8 o'clock in the morning, whenever the court's open, I could be filing something against you. Simple. No notice. I don't have to say anything. All right? It's like utility companies. They give you a courtesy notice that they will shut off your services if you don't pay. They have to give you a courtesy notice? No, you're not paying the bill. Simple. If it's tenants' disorderly conduct, I got to give you at least 3 days notice before I can file any lawsuit. So I have to tell you, hey, could you please stop what you're doing? Right? Just stop being disorderly here in my property. Tenants are complaining. The neighbors are complaining. Please stop. Put it in writing. If after the 3 days they continue, what do? We can file the lawsuit. Got it? And so on. So there's different rules. This is all in that statement that's published annually that must be given to the tenants, right? Right here. Your rights, conditions for eviction, and so on. All the way at the bottom, I already mentioned this. If it's a foreclosure, the Anti-Eviction Act says you cannot get kicked out, even if you have a verbal lease. So, right here, I already addressed that. If it's a change of ownership, which is what happens in the foreclosure, it's treated the same way as a regular transaction. The tenant, the current tenant, still has rights. And the landlord, the new landlord, has to comply with that original lease. So as long as they are a paying tenant, they've proven that they've been paying, we can keep going. If they haven't been paying, then yeah, I can start eviction. If they don't agree to pay the new landlord, then yeah, I can start eviction. But as long as they pay, I cannot raise the rent and I cannot alter the lease. Any questions there? No? Simple? All right. Next, we got different types of leases. We're going to understand. Ria, that's the good life. All right. So we have gross lease, and gross lease is for residential. So gross lease we usually find in residential. What is a gross lease? As a tenant, you pay a fixed amount, and the landlord deals with taxes, insurance, maintenance, and all that stuff. So you pay the same $1,500 every month, and I deal with the increases or decreases of certain things, right? And these are called property charges. That's the most common, what everybody knows. Then we have what's called a net lease. The net lease is, as a tenant, you pay the $1,500 a month plus a percentage or all of the property charges. So we find this more in the commercial leases where, so we're talking about businesses and so on. So you could be responsible, like we are here. We pay a portion towards the CAMs, which is common areas maintenance. We pay a portion towards taxes, and we pay a portion towards the insurance of the building. So we have a triple net lease, which that's what it's called, triple net, when it includes taxes, insurance, and other expenses, so maintenance. What it does not include, guys, is this right here. Debt services. So landlord, you're paying a mortgage? I got nothing to do with that. That's on you. All right? So where it says debt services, it's mortgage or other financing, any other financing against the building. Mortgage or any other financing against the building. So when it comes to debt services, we don't pay for that. I'll pay a portion for taxes, insurance, and maintenance, but that's it. You good? The next we have is percentage lease. Now, percentage lease is exactly the same thing as a net lease, but with a little twist to it. Okay, so it's also the same as I told you. You pay a flat fee every month plus taxes, insurance, and maintenance. But anytime your business goes above a stated amount, we get to charge a percentage of that amount. So here's the example. A lease might provide for a minimum monthly rental of $1,200. So this is your net lease. $1,200 is what you pay, right? With a further agreement that you would pay as a tenant, you pay an additional amount each month, equivalent to 5% of all gross sales above $30,000. So every time your business goes above $30,000 in gross sales, I, the landlord, receive 5% of that amount. Did you guys understand? So this is found mainly in shopping centers, for instance, strip malls, right? Where I believe in your business, and to help you out, I'll charge you a lower rent. But because I believe in your business so much, I expect a higher return every time you go above 30,000. So I become almost like a partner. You guys got it? Any questions? Throw them in the chat. What do you mean, a day? Oh, this is from your gross, whatever we agree. But traditionally, if it's monthly rent payments, then it's based on the gross monthly rent. Every time your business goes above monthly, above 30,000, in this example, I get 5%. I could have said above 100,000, and I get 2%. So it's an agreement between the landlord and the tenant. We have variable leases, and with that we have graduated, and we have index leases. Graduated means they step up. So we start with $500, goes to $750, goes to $1,000, and so on. So graduate as you go in certain dates. The index is based on the cost of living index, or CLI. Get familiar with CLI when it comes to rent control, because rent control, for instance, in Newark, is based on a percentage or CLI, whichever is lower. CLI is the cost of living. Does the cost of living go up or down? Goes up, right? So they put a comparison is either a percentage or CLI, whichever is the lowest amount. Okay. Ground leases. Ground leases are also called Terra leases. Terra means ground, so Terra leases. What is a ground lease? Well, where we have shopping centers, where we have gas stations, where we have supermarkets, where we have Rite Aid, Walgreens, and so on, most of the times they do not own the land. They rented the land only, and they were authorized to build on it. Okay? So, as a landlord, for instance, I have property, roughly 20 acres and then 10 acres in Texas. My dad and I are not doing anything with the property, it's just there, right? But once somebody shows up and says, hey, this area is developing, we want to put a strip mall over here. Sure. Are you selling? No. I'm renting for a long term if you want, but I'm not selling. Because land always increases in value, it appreciates, right? But I don't have to deal with the maintenance of a building, and I don't have to deal with the construction of the building. So the tenant that decides to rent the land already knows they have to build on the land, and this is traditionally a triple net lease. So the tenant is responsible for everything on the property. Now, does it make sense if you're going to build on my property? Does it make sense for me to rent to you for 1 year or two? You're about to spend 30, 40, 50 million dollars building something. Does it make sense to be a year or two? No. So traditionally, ground leases could be for 50 years or even up to 999 years. Speaking of which, Tahir just wrote that City Center Mall in Patterson has a land lease or a ground lease for 100 years. Yeah, absolutely. Okay. I don't know. I think Tahir should go work for Twitter or something with all this fact checking and stuff like that. I don't know. Maybe Facebook will hire you because I mean they need it. Actually, today I was watching something on Twitter and I had to make a comment. I actually had to make a comment saying false, false, false. Please verify sources before you say it. Because the biggest problem is people see stuff on social media and they start replying and forwarding and copying and pasting without verifying if it's true or not. So I could tell you right now, hey, somebody just killed somebody, and because you guys maybe trust me from this relationship we have, whatever I said now goes. No, verify. Crazy what's going on out there right now with social media. Anyway, I'm telling you, I'm gonna hire Tahir just to do stuff like this. Like, hey, this just came out on Twitter. Fact checked, and let me know so I can put there with the source. It's gonna be the new anonymous. All right, right here. Tell me if this makes sense. The lease may state what happens to the building at the end of the lease term, whether it reverts to the property owner or the tenant is responsible for demolishing it. So what we're saying is, you built 20, 30, 40, 50 million dollar property on my land, right? Building on my land. And then at the end of the 50 or 100 years or 200 years, right? I'll tell you to demolish it. Does it make sense? Let me know in the chat. What do you think about this? Why would it doesn't make sense, I know, but why would a landlord ask you to tear it down? Why would a landlord ask you to tear it down? Who knows? Give me that answer. Why would? Future plans for property. To lease it again. He owns the land. He or she can rent it to somebody else. He's owner of the plans. Maybe you want to build a condo. Maybe wants a new business opportunity for more money. Landlord had a better offer. Okay. One person knows the answer. Keep going. Anybody else? Best opinion possible? Why would I ask? to tear down the building? Keep going. Got 39 people. You have like 15 comments. Pressure for money. That'll be fun. Y'all said tax. Mimi said tax. Aisha said and appreciate. What else? What else do you think it might be? Better deal. Okay. To void a contract. Contract is over. It's the lease is done. That's what I was saying. So lease is over. And I ask you, hey, I don't want that building there. If you're not going to renew, then when you leave, take the building with you. Why would I ask you that? Nope. Lease is over. Just a traditional lease is over. You rented from me. You're a great tenant, let's say. Best tenant ever. Let's eliminate a bunch of these things. Best tenant ever. You leased from me, but we're not renewing. Why would I ask you to tear it down? It's an expense. Absolutely. What kind of expense? Because demo costs a lot. When it comes to commercial, traditionally we put that onto the tenant, unless it's subdivision within the building. All right. So, personal property. We're going to carry that building out of there, that $50 million building out of there. It's personal property. That was a good one. All right, so mainly, guys, is one, tax purposes. Two, the current structure might be difficult to lease. If you guys notice, commercial sometimes stays without being rented for 10 years. And I have to pay taxes. Guys, when it was land, my taxes were $2,000 a year. Now it's a building, my taxes are $60,000 a year. And then goes 5 years, and then goes 10 years. You understand? So a building being there and not giving me any type of return is an expense. So I will ask the tenant, traditionally, I'll ask the tenant, hey, find me another suitable tenant to take over, since you're not renewing, or tear down the building. Because once you tear down, it converts to land only. It's reassessed for land only. And how much am I going to pay in taxes? Definitely not 60,000. You guys understand? So I prefer not to rent it for 5 years or 10 years as land, right? Because I pay less taxes, or make sure I force you, kind of like, yeah, blackmailing. I force you to find me a suitable tenant. Yep. Steph, a hospital, not easy to lease. We don't need to talk about hospitals. Let's look at, if you guys know where Market Street is in Newark as an example. Market Street and Broad Street, most of the buildings there were vacant for like 15, 18, 20 years, some of them. Just vacant, just there. It's an expense every year. Taxes here are not cheap. So think about it. All right? So that would be it. All right, next. We're going to get into property management, page 176, property management. Jessiel just asked, who is responsible for the tax while the land is leased? Traditionally, these are net leases. So as a landlord, I have no responsibility whatsoever. You take over that responsibility. And I collect rent forever. Great deal, isn't it? Guys, if you can, buy land. Buy a lot of land, especially in developing areas. The cheapest real estate that you can afford, probably, right? So, or that you can buy. So buy land, keep it there, and make sure you find, but in developing areas. Okay, so make sure you have the master plan. You guys remember the master plan? Don't buy land just because of buying land, because I told you to buy land. Know everything that's happening around that land. Know that it will develop. Know that it will change. It will be worth more. I have a friend of mine that has a lot. It's 50 by 75, I think it is, right next to Rutgers. And she's not selling. And she's been holding on to that property for 12 years. She bought the property for $30,000. She knocked down the house that was there and kept it as land. so pays less taxes. You guys, I don't know if you know or not what's happening here in Newark. Some of you might not know, some might. But Newark, just like Harrison, just like Jersey City, and just like Brooklyn, it just sky high in values. So that piece of land she bought for 30 is now worth like $200,000 or $300,000 as is. You understand? A lot of value to it. That was good, Miss Martinez. Can you plant flowers in your land and steal it from yourself? Sure. Maria, your company headquarters is there? Next to is it in Newark, or are you saying next to the university? Oh, Panasonic, all right. Oh yeah. They were very smart when they moved into that building. So very close to me. Terry, random. How much does the city of Newark charge to demolish the structure? The city of Newark? Not understanding the question. What do you mean the city of Newark? The city of Newark does not charge to demolish unless it's abandoned or it's damaging the community or health or safety of others. Other than that, they don't. You have to hire your own contractors to do so. Amori just sold his multi-family on Miller Street. I'm sure you made some good money out of it. Yep, I see that face right there. And you said you were a veteran? So you bought it no money down? No. FHA. You have another that you bought it? Oh, okay. All right. We'll talk about FHA, VAs, and all that coming up soon. Let me not spoil the next chapters. All right, so I'm glad you guys in the chat are getting to know each other and like, oh, we work so close and all that. That's great, network. Let's finish this. It's 9 o'clock. I want to tell you guys real quick, property management is not heavily tested in the exam. I do have a whole another course for property management. It's not a requirement, only if you go towards that. I have a short course and I have a longer course more in detail. But property management is not that heavy in the exam. So I'm going to skip a few things here. All right, guys. One of the questions that might happen to show up is, what is property management? Like, what's the primary function of the property manager? And if so, right, the answer will be that your job is to preserve the value and generate income for the owner. Also, your job is to increase the value of the property and maximize the income, okay? So as a property manager, your job is to care for somebody else's property and make sure they get their return on the property. Tahira, does it count for CE credits? Yeah, all my additional courses traditionally count towards CE credits. Yep. Before you start working for somebody, again, your book is highlighted, guys. A lot of this stuff doesn't matter right now, I'm telling you. The management agreement must be signed when you start working for somebody, just like your independent contractor agreement with your broker if you become a salesperson. And that management agreement is going to include your responsibilities. Remember, with chapter 3, right here, chapter 3, we talked about this in detail, that you will be a general agent as a property manager. You're not a universal agent and you're not a special agent. You're a general agent, meaning you handle a broad range of matters for somebody else. So it's not full powers. It's not one power, it's some power over somebody else's property and decisions, right? You still have the same charge of care, obedience, accounting, loyalty, and disclosure. And the management agreement is going to include, obviously, a description of the property, how long it's going to be in force, your responsibilities, your authority as an agent, how often you should report, how much you get paid, and budget, which is where we are getting into right now. So budgeting, we're going to talk about operating expenses. And this is the cost to keep lights on, meaning cost of operation. So when I say to keep the lights on is for the business to keep running, there are certain expenses that are repeated, right? We call these the fixed, continuous fixed expenses. They are repeated, like utilities, taxes, employees. Does that make sense? So these are the fixed expenses to keep the lights on. So every business wants to keep their lights on, have to budget for those fixed expenses. But I'm sure you guys already know this. Are there surprises in your life? Can we predict everything and be ready for everything? No. So these fixed expenses are great, right? But you have to prepare yourself for, hold on, sorry. You have to prepare yourself for variable expenses, such as repairs, right? You need to be ready for that. You also have to put some money aside for capital expenditures. What are capital expenditures? This is like major expenses, like replacing a roof in a building, right? It's not cheap. Can we do it this month? Can we do it next month? Can we do it next year maybe? We need to figure it out and spread it over several years. You understand? So we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, but you got to be ready and allocate monies, put monies aside. And guys, this is for your life as well. It's not just property management for others. It's managing yourselves, right? Pay yourselves first. That's something that you need to understand. What is pay yourselves first? A portion of your money that you make, set it aside. Then pay your bills and then pay everything else. Set some money aside right away, right? Mauricio was talking about that 2 days ago. That's one of the things we talked about, how I handle my kids, what I'm having them learn, right? And he mentioned that it forces them to put money into savings, right? But pay yourselves first, very important. But allocate money just in case. The emergency fund, you gotta have it. Savings is one thing, emergency fund is another. Something people don't understand. Savings, one thing, emergency fund is another, okay? And other things, investments, preparing for retirement, all that stuff. But always handle yourself first before you go out spending your money in stuff that you don't need just to impress others. You've heard that? You've heard that before? We buy stuff that we don't need to impress people that we don't like. Have you heard that before? Right. Renting property. There's a big difference. I want to address this real quick. There's a big difference between being a property manager, right, and that of a broker. So managing a property and being a broker, there's a big difference. A property manager manages the property. A broker leases the property, is a leasing agent. Could they be one and the same? Yes, if you're licensed. If you're not licensed, you're a property manager, you're not a leasing agent, right? When you're handling property for others, remember that. When you're handling property for others. If you are a salaried employee of the owner of the building, do you need a license? No. If you're a company that's managing for other companies or individual managing for multiple individuals, do you need a license? Yes. Okay? So remember, property manager may use the services of a leasing agent. So may, it's not required, right? But the agent does not undertake the full responsibility of maintenance and management of the property. So these are two separate entities. It could be the same if the property manager is licensed or not. Setting the rental rates. This is easy, common sense. How do we set rental rates? Just like setting the sales price. We set it by looking at comparables. So we're going to look at comparable buildings, what they have, what we have, adjust based on the amenities that we offer and what they offer. We adjust that, and here's the price that we charge for this unit, okay? Which is definitely determined by supply and demand. One more thing we need to address here is Vacancy. All right, there's a few people that don't understand this at first, but here's the thing. If a lot of units are empty, what is the problem? Tell me in the chat, if a lot of units are empty, what do you think the problem is? We have 100 units, but only 60% of it is occupied. You see what you guys are writing? It might not be the problem at all. It might not be the problem at all. In fact, look here. Ready? A high level of vacancy does not necessarily indicate that the rents are too high. You're wrong. It could be you. You see here? It could be the management. Guys, understand one thing. I can go to a restaurant that has the best food in the world, but if the service sucks, I'll never go back. You guys get it? The amenities might be great in this apartment building. It might be the best place on earth. But the way we're treated and the way they handle the management here sucks. Why would I live here? That every time I need something in the building to be taken care of, it's like I'm begging? No. Management. Did you guys understand? Remember, a restaurant, right? You have okay food when the service is excellent, because that's why we go out. We go out to eat at restaurants not just because of the food, it's because we want to be treated once in a while. We want to be pampered once in a while. And I used to work in the restaurant business years ago. I would not allow a client to touch a bottle. As soon as I see a client touching a bottle to serve himself, I'm like, no, stop right there. Either stop or get out. You came here for me to serve you. You understand? You came here for me to serve you. I'm going to give you the best ever. And I would talk to them like that. And guess what? My tips were like above 20, 25, sometimes 30%. And they would come back and ask for me, right? Because again, if you go to a restaurant, right? The food sometimes was not the best food, I'll admit. It was not the best food. But as long as the service was, people would love to come back. And I had people that were there every week, right? You guys understand what I'm saying? And I'm not saying I'm the best. I'm just telling you what I did and how it worked for me, right? So again, management, how you treat people is key. Just like here. A high percentage of occupancy may appear that you have an effective rental program, right? It's almost fully occupied. It's at 95%, right? It's great. What does that mean? Supply and demand. That means there's a lot of demand for this apartment. What should we do? See, being vacant doesn't mean you have to drop rents. You have to figure out why nobody wants to be there. It could be the rent. I'm not saying no. It could be the price, right? But I'm telling you, a restaurant that I worked at, the price of the meals was very high, but the service, the food was sucked, and the service was okay for the most part, right? People still went there. Price was high, but the service matched. Does that make sense? Here, a lot of people want to go there. Every time it reaches 95% or more, what do you want to do? Supply and demand. If there's not enough units and a lot of people want it, we can charge whatever we want. If you guys notice where you live, if it's like an upcoming town like Newark, Harrison, and so on, the rents doubled. The rents doubled. Why? Because people want to live here. So we can charge whatever we want. The house prices doubled. Why? Because people want to move here. Are you guys understanding this? All right, so again, supply and demand. Amori just wrote, it's like going to Chick-fil-A. I'm not sure I get you on that one. They're closed on Sundays, the only day that I actually go out for that kind of food. All right, cool. So really almost done. Tenant selection. You got to make sure, the only thing it says here is you got to make sure that the tenant fits the space. Again, I'm going a little fast here because a lot of the stuff is not tested at all. You see it's all yellow. It's not, there's no green here, right? But you got to make sure they fit the space. You're not going to bring a manufacturing company to a strip mall, are you? Does it make sense to bring a manufacturer to a strip mall? Right? No. Simple. Collecting the rents. How could you easily collect rents or reduce the hardship of collecting rents? Simply, make sure you investigate the financial references given by the prospect, local credit bureaus, and when possible, prospective tenants, former landlord. All right? In my very first investment 15 years ago, that's exactly what I did. I looked for a credit report and I did call the former landlord. I did everything by the book. All right? And those of you that know me, that know this story already, I'm being very sarcastic. I did not. I trusted and I believed in the person that was in front of me. And this person stayed there a whole year lease and paid me less than I'm sorry, I went a little bit less than 9 months unpaid. Okay, so technically I got paid 3.5 months, let's say, out of the whole year. She knew exactly how to run the system. She felt me out. She knew that I was a greenie in this business, and it was almost the reason for me to quit real estate altogether. So I'm glad I didn't, but that's my story. Make sure you always verify where they were before, and like I can tell you the story in detail, maybe another time, but always verify credit report, always verify where they were before, okay? Now, why would you want to verify financial references? As a property manager, doesn't matter as much for what I'm about to say, but as a salesperson, a lot of you, right, so when you be licensed, I'm already including in our group the licensed ones. A lot of you, what you forget is that every single person that wants to rent is a potential lead. A lot of them don't even know that they have the qualifications to buy a house. Stop wasting your leads, all right? That's what I'm saying. Always get financial references. Check the credit report. Figure out how much they're paying. Figure out how much how much they have in salary, right? And ask them, why would you rent when you can buy? Does it hurt? Right? I just gave you a hint that could make you $1 million in the next couple of years. Just out of that one, between application fees and leads for purchases, that's it. And you can do this. Okay. You know Trulia, right? You know Zillow? You know those companies? How do you think they make money? By selling leads. Premium agents, they pay for leads. I'm just saying, you guys could actually come up with a website. Now I'm giving you too much. I should stop and do it myself, right? You guys could come up with a website that just collects leads and distributes to other realtors in other areas. You guys remember that you can receive what's called a referral fee? Are you guys understanding what I'm trying to say? All right. This course just went up in price, I'm saying. Right now, I'm doubling the cost of it. As of right now, so pay up. All right. I'm just tired of seeing people wasting the leads, wasting the opportunities. Hiring employees versus contracting for services. Guys, we're really almost done. When should you hire employees or when should you contract for services? If you have a 100-unit apartment building, right? This is my example every time because it's easy. What is the most common problem that you're going to have in that building in terms of maintenance? What is the most common problem you're going to have in that building? Most likely it's going to be plumbing. So if you have 100 units, do you think this is going to be, tell me here in the chat, do you think this is going to be a yearly problem, a quarterly problem, monthly problem, weekly problem, or daily problem? 100 units, what do you think is going to be? 3 say daily, 2 say monthly. What else? What do you guys think? Daily, weekly, 100-unit apartment building. Tahira goes like hourly. All right, so if you guys see right here, right? For some reason, I have a fly on the TV that's at the end, and I looked at my screens to see where the fly is. It's so messed up, isn't it, to have all these screens? All right. Daily, okay? Daily. It's gonna be daily issues. It's 100 units. Come on, guys. It's daily. No matter if it's a brand new building or an old building, daily. All right? Just saying. So, here's what you need to remember. A licensed plumber to come out is on average $350, including exiting the shop, getting to you, coming back, and maybe including 2 or 3 hours. That's the average. There's 365 days in the year, times 350. Should we hire an employee, like a plumber, to become an employee, or should we contract for service on a daily basis? You guys understand what I'm saying? So this depends on the size of the building. Should we hire for services? Right? So if it's a 100-unit apartment building, most likely you're going to need a plumber or an electrician or somebody that understands these things or is licensed to be your superintendent. I'll even give you an apartment for free. Just live there and deal with it. Not me, right? If it's a 2-family, are we going to do this or are we going to contract for services? We contract as needed, okay? So these are your duties. Insurance. We are also required, guys, to help the property owner to find appropriate insurance. Now, real quick, I'm just trying to give you some golden nuggets here. It says right here that the property manager or a member of the management firm may also be a licensed insurance broker. Why would you be a licensed insurance broker as well as a property manager? Go. Right here. Go. Why? Why would you, in the right state of mind, have these 2 licenses? Jeff, people call you to say they can't flush? All right. All right, so Jonathan says cost saving. Mauricio says facilitate insurance to tenants and make money. Make more money, says Shirley. Natalia, to make more money. Mimi, to make more money. So I guess we got it, right? If you're in the right state of mind, what should you do? Have multiple licenses, okay? Think about it. It's a 100-unit apartment building as an example, right? 100 units. You're getting your salary as a property manager. Let's say it's 100,000. You're getting your salary as a property manager. The building needs insurance. So you have your salary. The building needs insurance, right? 100 tenants need renter's insurance. 100 tenants might have cars, so they need car insurance. 100 tenants might have a health, so they need health insurance. And they might even have a life, so they need life insurance. 6 different ways you can make money out of that building. And all of these are recurring, passive income. Just saying. Why would you have your insurance license as well? Maybe even double or triple your money. You guys got it? All right, so that's another hint. And I'm done with hints. I just want you guys to highlight a couple things. If you have the book, just pay attention to it. As a property manager, you should be so you should have a CPM, which is a Certified Property Management Designation. So it's just a special course that you go through. You should be part of IREM or IREM, whatever you want to say it. It's the Institute of Real Estate Management. Also be part of BOMA International, which is the Building Owners and Managers Association International. And why would you do this? The reason why you want to do this is because you get to, everything is about networking. You get to discuss what other people have had and learn from them. Just like the hints that I give you guys, and as you guys are talking here, and we use them as resources for the questions and answers, right? For me to help explain. It's knowing what other people have gone through. It's impossible for me to know everything. So that's why sharing experiences helps you. That's what it says here. Participate in as many networking events as you can within your profession or your niche. Okay. Don't go to all of them. Just go to those that are related to what you're trying to do. And finally, only because in certain states like Florida, they ask a lot about this. It might show up in your exam. It might not. But CAI is the Community Associations Institute. This is a nonprofit organization to research and distribute information for association living. Okay, and they offer training and designations for specialized management. All right, that's it. So again, not heavily tested, but do go through it on your own pace. I mean, at your own pace. You don't need to really focus on property management. You should know for the exam, but not that important. If you do choose to proceed in property management, then there's other courses, like I just said. CPM is offered by the National Association of Realtors. I'm trying to become a CPM certified instructor as well, so I'll be able to teach this. At this moment, I'm not, so I can teach property management, give you a certificate, be part of your portfolio, but I would not give you as a NAR certificate, okay? But definitely take courses toward it. All right, guys. What do I have here? What are the requirements to get CPM? The requirement is that you're part of the National Association of Realtors, and then you have to register with IREM, the Institute for Real Estate Management, and that's it. Go through 30-something hours of courses, and you get it. That's it. Okay. All right, guys. Any other questions you might have? Feel free to ask. Good night, Shaisha. Jocelyn, good night. Any other questions? Questions? All right, guys. If there's no questions, then I'm going to see you guys tomorrow, 5:30. I'll make sure I have the right link this time. I'm sorry. I got you the wrong link today. All right, guys. Oh, and those of you that are taking the exam, look out for the email tonight. I am going to put pressure right now to make sure that the email goes through, okay? Jeff, do you need a broker's license to be a property manager? No. To own a property management company? Yes. To be a property manager? No. Okay? You need a salesperson license. That you do. Good? All right, guys. We're down to 20 people. So I'll see you.